Hello and welcome to another episode of Social Impact Live. I'm your host, Joel Coleman, and this is the show where I talk with social entrepreneurs and social innovators about what it takes to create meaningful change in the world. Today, I want to answer a question that came to me from a good friend, Joshua Sykes, about motivation to create social change in the world. And I'll go ahead and launch into the question now. So, Josh asks, he says basically, I struggle with having enough motivational energy despite the great desire I have to do good. The depression I experience seems to either limit my supply or accelerate the speed by which my motivational energy gets zapped up. We all experience this at different times, at different levels, and have different draws on our energy based on the varied interests and weaknesses. So, do you have any recommendations for how to expand the capacity/duration of the limited resource known as motivational energy? Or for how to heal any leaks in our fuel tubes and inefficiencies in our engines? I think this is a fantastic question, Josh, and this is something that we all experience when we are trying to create social change in the world. And so I'm super happy that you asked it and that you were so transparent in wanting to find a solution to this. Um, what I started thinking about when I was thinking about a response to your question is that I wanted to come to you in this video with what I first make of an answer to your question, and then actually over the next several videos, I think I'm going to put together some of the things that demotivate us that we should be aware of, that we should be focused on overcoming in order to maintain our motivation as we move forward. So, kicking that off with this episode, what I would say as a first response to your question around finding motivation or fixing some of those leaks is that we should understand what the core of motivation comes from. And in my experience, human beings are motivated by two different things. And this is actually backed up by research on other animals, mammals in general experience this. There's a part of our brains that either it seeks to find pleasure or it seeks to avoid pain, right? Those are the two main motivators that we have. We either seek out pleasure or we seek to avoid pain. And I think it's a really important thing for us to remember and to realize, because I think it plays a role in our motivation to create social impact as well. There's a concept in business and in entrepreneurship called a hair on fire problem. A hair on fire problem can be compared, for example, to an itch on your leg. Let's imagine you have two problems simultaneously in your own life. One is that your hair is literally on fire, right? Think about what that means for you. Your head is in pain, in intense and deep pain, right? And the other is that your leg itches. If you have these two problems simultaneously, you are going to seek out to address the primary pain that you feel, right? You want to relieve yourself of that pain. You want to avoid the pain. And so you're going to find a solution to your hair on fire problem. Well, on the flip side, think about other things in your own life that you might find pleasurable, that you find enjoyable. Maybe those are some of the things that you choose to do or that you'd like to do rather than, getting up and going and creating a social impact. So I know for me, some of those things at times are, playing video games, reading a book, watching a movie, relaxing on my couch. Those are all very natural human functions, all things that we all seek out to do, spend time with friends and family. And when we think about it in the equation of either seeking out pleasure or reducing pain, we need to think about, where does social impact fit into that? And to me, the answer is that social impact does both, but only if certain conditions are met. And the main condition that I think needs to be met in order for social impact to be something that we feel, this yearn, this urge, this desire to get out of bed and go do, is that we need to feel like it can either produce the pleasure for us or it can alleviate a pain for us. In order for that to take place, we have to be in close proximity to the challenges that we ultimately want to address. So, what does that look like? Well, for many of us, right, we go through our lives, and the closest proximity we have to some of the biggest social issues that we face is actually what we see on the news or what we might see on social media. And in some senses, that exposure isn't super helpful. It sort of saturates us with a general feeling that the world is falling apart, but it doesn't actually acclimate us to the emotional state of the people who are going through those specific issues, because it just bounces from issue to issue to issue. So we see things about people losing their homes in wildfires in California or Australia or the Amazon. We see things about homelessness next. We see something about a burglary or a homicide or et cetera. And it's issue after issue after issue. So cutting to the chase, the thing that I would suggest to anyone who really wants to find that motivation, and the thing that I would say is often I've seen missing, and I'm not sure if this is the case for you, Josh, or not, but is often missing, is proximity to the issue at hand. When I think about what compelled me to begin creating social change, it was a personal experience seeing my brother go through cancer, seeing my brother pass away from cancer, understanding what it was like to be near and form bonds with kids in cancer wards, not just my brother, but other kids as well, led me to share in their emotions, right? To form a type of empathy that meant that to relieve their issues would give me pleasure, and to relieve their issues would also avoid a feeling of pain that I felt when I would see them or feel what they were feeling, right? That was a proximity-based issue. That was a proximity-based thing that led to me really wanting to create that sort of change in the world. And I think that that's something that might be useful for you. So the key for you would be, if you're not doing it so far, it might be going and volunteering with an organization that puts you on the front lines of working directly with the people who experience a given issue. And I think that's going to have its own challenges. There's its own challenge associated with getting there, its own challenge associated with showing up every day for a while. But I think that once we form a bond with the people that we are trying to serve, we find that our emotions become aligned with their own, and that what relieves their pain begins to relieve our pain, and what brings them pleasure begins to bring us pleasure. And if we think about it, that is also the core of so many of our relationships, right? Our relationship with our parents, our relationship with our sibling, our relationship with our significant other, those often come down to the shared bond, the shared resonance, where what makes you happy makes me happy. I'm happier when you're happy. I know that's the case for me and my wife. When she's smiling and she's happy, it makes me happier. And when she's in pain and she's upset, I want to do something to relieve that. And it can't always, right? But the desire is the first piece that we really want to strengthen in order to maintain motivation. All right, so that is my first piece of feedback and advice for anyone who wants to create a sense of motivation in their life to create change in the world. That is something that I think we can all lean into. Google search for organizations in your local town and figure out which ones are serving folks on the front lines, where you can build an actual rapport, not just with general groups of people, but with real individuals. So this might be big brothers, big sisters, right? This might be an organization like your church, where that the church is going out and it's actually serving specific group of individuals over time. Maybe you go in and you are a community mentor of some sort to individuals who are incarcerated, right? There are so many opportunities that exist, and you're going to have to figure out what they are in your local area. But search those out and find one that you can give a weekend, a month, maybe to start with, just to see if that's something that you want to do. Maybe if you can't give a weekend, a month, just try it out one time, see if you can form a bond with someone and see what that starts to do to you and to your desire to create a motivation. I think that the more that we are in tune with that shared bond, the better off we'll be. As a final piece of advice or tip, if you are struggling to figure out which issue matters to you, there is an exercise that I've done for years now, and it's called 100 Problems. It's actually quite pivotal and instrumental in my own development as a social entrepreneur and innovator. And it freed me from this feeling like there were too many issues, but not enough for me to want to focus on either. List out 100 problems that exist in the world. I'm talking about things like poverty and things like hurricanes and things like wildfires and things like homelessness and things like, people sleeping outside and being cold at night on the streets. You can go very micro with the problems that you see, or very macro. Figure out which of those resonates with you most. And so I know it's going to take a bit of motivation to create that list. If that's a challenge that you face, is figuring out which one you want to focus on. But create that list and then narrow in which of these are my top 5, which of these are my top 3, which one of these might I want to work on. And then maybe for that top 5, just Google around and see what organizations serve that cause that you can begin to work on. And then reach out to those organizations to do that work. This is a channel that, again, is about helping you find the motivation that you need, but also gain the tools and the tips you need to innovate in a socially responsible and positive way in the world, and to build social enterprises. And if you want to build a social enterprise at some point in the future, this is also an essential step, right? In order to build the structure around creating lasting change, we need to form that ongoing and cohesive bond. So hopefully this was a helpful episode for you. If it was, please like, follow, subscribe. I would love to hear comments from you also on what resonated with you from this episode. Which of these steps do you find to be most likely to help you develop that sort of motivation you're talking about? And I will be back, based on your question, Josh, with another episode tomorrow and for the days after that, with some more tips on how to overcome the things that continue to demotivate us. So, forming that bond is only one step in the process. But there are other things that try to zap our energy away from the pipeline, as you mentioned, and I want to address that part too. Thank you so much for the question. If anyone else has a question, please leave that in the comments below, and I will be back tomorrow with another episode.